Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brendan McLaughlin, Educational Counsel at PLRB, and today I'll be joined by Mike Brode, VP of Meetings and Education at PLRB, as well as Katie Peterson and Suzanne Eller. Katie is a recipient of the 2026 PLRB Outstanding Claims Professional Award. So, what's the scenario?
Ooh.
Wildfire claims are emotional, public, and inconsistent across carriers, so adjusters often become the face of no. Using a real fire example, we'll explore empathy, advanced payments, uneven guidance, social media comparisons, and follow-through as tools to protect our reputation. But first, let's head into the deck page.
All right. My favorite part, Brendan.
All right. Welcome to our new guests.
Thanks for having us.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. And I'll start the conversation here, Brendan. Now, last week, I think, was our first time ever that we actually had a thing highlighted on the deck page. So here we have a number of firsts, which is exciting. So Katie's here. She's a recipient of our Outstanding Claims Professional Award for 2026. So round of applause there. That's excellent. Yes. So we have both, I think, Brendan, for the first time ever, a person in Katie and Suzanne, and a thing, which was the Outstanding Claims Professional Award of 2026. So how exciting is that, huh?
Yeah, very exciting. That's an annual award, goes to, I think, usually 3 claims professionals, and it recognizes adjusters who go above and beyond, restoring lives, demonstrating technical expertise, and setting the standard in claim service. So
Absolutely.
It's a really great award to, and I think I was there when it was, Brian, our CEO, announced it at the claims conference. So it's a big event. So absolutely.
Yeah, very exciting. We do get a number of submissions every year. So the big panel goes through, picks out our top 2 to 3. So, Katie, you were up against a lot of competition. So it was excellent. And Suzanne, if you did the write-up, you did an excellent job there too, because that's key as well. Get something
well deserved.
So there you go. Yes,
thank you. I'm honored.
All right. So, Katie and Suzanne, I know the scenarios about these wildfire claims. What can you share about your experience working with those insureds and the scenarios they face?
A lot of what we faced that's been different with these wildfires is just the environmental factors. And then in today's age with social media, everybody's talking. They have public groups and WhatsApp. They have WhatsApp for different neighborhoods. And then also even in using ChatGPT, they're learning the policy and asking a lot of, questions, what they should be asking, and getting all these letters to that we have to respond to. So it's been a pretty challenging fire, and a lot of people always, when they hear insurance and people got dropped, they just have this bad taste in their mouth of adjusters. So we want them to know that we do care, That's been some of the challenges. It's been different.
Yeah. And I know, Katie, I was in a prior life before PLRB, was more on the casualty side. So there, you don't deal with some of the issues that you do with first party folks. But you're right. I think, one thing I always like to say is that we're good people in the insurance industry. We are, but we get a bad rap. If folks already think coming out the gate that we're out there not to treat them fairly and we're just going to cheat them out of something somehow. And then you're right. I'm an old man. So when I got into business, social media was not a thing. So I couldn't even imagine now what's going on with, and you're right. I mean, we have our own little neighborhood, not only a Facebook group, but also other ways that we communicate just with folks in the neighborhood. So it gets down to a local level as well. So does that add some unique challenges to trying to navigate these claims?
It does, because carriers handle things inconsistently, or the CDI the Department of Insurance will put out a bulletin, and it's just a recommendation, and some carriers may follow it, some may not. So it becomes my next door neighbor got this.
Yeah.
So it becomes challenging for the adjusters, and how do we combat that? And then there's just it changes all the time because they're different bulletins. So yeah.
And I think along with that is that we just always have to try to remind people is that every claim is different, even though they may have, it all may be a wildfire. Everybody's claim has to be looked at for its individuality. And just because, like what Katie was saying, just because the neighbor got, it doesn't mean their scenario is exactly the same. And so you have to look at every claim for its merits and everything, every, specific. So it's not a blanket statement. And that's what I think people misunderstand sometimes.
Yeah, I think, talking about inconsistency, I think that's probably how it feels. But, in reality, it's almost like variation. There's multiple different companies. There's multiple different, each insured is going to have a different setup of their property or maybe even different policies. So what is ultimately just the variation in how different companies have policies to handle things or different processes can feel like an inconsistency to a homeowner who's, maybe not up on all these nuances, and that's kind of a challenge for adjusters, isn't it, to sometimes be the bearer of bad news or even just the bearer of just the nuance, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, how some of us try to combat that is just building that trust in the beginning and finding commonality. And a lot of them, even though they can still go online and figure things out, being able to explain the policy to them in language that normal humans use instead of breaking out your policy, just kind of relating to them. And I think people are more receptive when you actually can relate it in language that they understand, in terms they understand. So
I think another thing that's really important is that, we do hear, unfortunately, is that, claims do get passed to a different adjuster due to circumstances. And just one of the things as an adjuster is that, you always want to take into consideration when you get that new claim is I start from the beginning, and I always explain to an insured, I can go through the file and I can see what's done, but I always want to take into account, say, hey, I'm going to explain everything. And that way they get it from the beginning. So there's no questions. I go through coverages, even though it may be a year old, especially in these instances, but I go from the beginning and I start basically from scratch with them. And I want them to understand all the coverages that are available, all the things that are payable to them, and be able to just work from that point. I can't fix something that they may not have liked from before, but I can move it forward from that day that I get that claim. And just again, like what Katie was saying, is the trust, and we are not bad people. We're not, we have a job to do. We have a policy to enforce. And we're here to put them back to where they were before the loss. That's the goal, and we just try to do that.
I think that kind of gets to, we hear a lot that the first impression is really important, starting off with empathy and really making that connection, but you don't always get the chance to make the first impression, right? Sometimes someone else has already made it and you're coming into the situation with either you're taking over the claim, or maybe it's just that they, have heard stories from the person down the street. So, yeah, it sounds like it can be a real challenge to kind of unwind some of those expectations.
Yeah, I think Suzanne does a good job of it. And I think some adjusters can, when you make that first contact, it's all about what the policy can't do instead of how can we help you.
Right.
So I think, when you start off with what you're not going to do, I think people automatically just tense up. Let me hire a public adjuster or attorney to handle this, because I'm not going to be able to deal with that bad insurance company. So, yeah.
Are there policy tools too, Katie and Suzanne, like advance payments or anything like that that you can do to help kind of ease folks' initial pain that they're going through?
Definitely. Yeah, we issue advance payments all the time on that. And tell them, hey, we'll figure it out later. Let's just, our first priority is, one, to get you a place to stay. If it's figuring out where your family is going to live, you guys need clothes, and just communicating that to them that, first of all, on your first contact, put aside the policy. How are you guys doing? How is your family? And I think that builds a lot of rapport.
Yeah.
So
How there's also sort of a gap when it comes to just knowledge and understanding the policy, right?
yeah.
There's just a gap in what the insured like understands about it. How do you handle that sort of situation where you're sort of tasked with educating almost, educating them about their own policy and how these things work? Yeah.
I know. For me, I mean, you basically. I always tell the adjusters, like, we wear so many hats. Where they're help them with their building, be their counselor, listening to them. So you have the technical side, and then you have the emotional file on a claim. But I think helping them understand. I don't like to talk to them about their policy over the phone, because I think it's a lot of times it just goes over their head. Give them the very basics, but sitting down with them, showing them how their policy reads, explaining it to them in the terms that they can understand. And then you get to meet them. You're not just over the phone, finding, my daughter plays volleyball too. And just being able to show them that the policy isn't about what we can't do. And then I think people are more receptive if you're able to explain the policy, even if it's something that can't be covered, relating it to them. Why I think people are able to accept that more, and more than when people don't explain it to them, or that's when I think the problems occur. If you don't explain it, don't return calls, that's when things start to go downhill.
And I think sorry, Katie, and I was going to say, I think going along with the policy is that people don't know what they buy. They buy a promise, but they don't read the policy, nor do agents always explain to them what's in it. People just assume that everything's covered, and that unfortunately there are things that aren't covered. In these wildfires, it's a little different situation, but policy is super important, and we have the policy that we have to abide by. This has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with where they live, none of those factors. It's the policy, that we have to enforce, just like there's rules, in all sorts of other businesses and games and things like that. But you have to enforce the policy itself, but people don't understand the policy. And, obviously as a insurance professional, we obviously know, that's part of our job, is to know the policy. So it's just like Katie said, being out in someone's house. I mean, I've many a times have I, when people are like, well, what is covered, and you just explain to them about it, and once you explain it, it's, I think, as opposed to just like, oh, it's not covered, but you are explaining why it, what's the reasoning for coverage, why there's limits, why there's all of those things. It's super helpful to an insured.
And I mean, I know with wildfires, any kind of cat situation, one of the challenges is volume, and just the huge amount of volume. But it really sounds like you've taken a positive approach to this, to where sitting down, making those connections are worth the time, and that I know that can be a challenge with the amount of volume you're facing. So it's fantastic that you've been able to approach it that way.
Yeah. Katie, I just kind of funny. I just got an email from an insured who his comment was, he said he was really going to miss our biweekly talks, because we get into this relationship with these people. We were very lucky to finally close his claim, and that was what he was saying. And it's you do. They're on your schedule, and you sit and you really get to know. I mean, I know way more than I really want to about a lot of people, but it's because of that, and it's how you address it and how you build that relationship with somebody.
And your biweekly talks, it's all about keeping communication with them. They would rather you say, I don't have an answer for you, I don't have your estimate yet, than just not returning the call, or they continue to email you and then they have to escalate it and then they're upset. I'd rather you just tell me, I don't have it. I'm going to have it maybe here, but I'll follow up with you, and making sure that you actually do follow up with them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always like one little tip I do, because we do have a lot of claims, but I will put some people don't like to, but I'll put the homeowner's name into my phone, so that when they call, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they feel like they are the only one, my only insured. So, just something and they appreciate it, too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of setting expectations, setting that personal touch, making sure you're there for folks when they're calling with questions, even if you don't have all the answers. Yeah, it sounds like a great approach.
Yeah. I think listening's a big thing. When we went, I did a lot of the workshops and listening to the insureds. And a lot of their concerns were the smoke and ash damage, the environmental damages. They all had electric vehicles, the batteries, and that kind of concern. And so when I was there, I could hear, okay, this is going to be an issue throughout our claim process. Let's get testing done for the smoke and ash and contaminants, because one, it's going to give them peace of mind, but two, it's going to set a protocol for us on how we should handle the claim based on the hygienist. So it's really about listening, and then before they know that they need testing, being proactive. I think claims is all about being proactive. If you, anticipate their needs before they know they need them, they're like, hey, this adjuster is great, and tells me what I have and returns the calls. So that's my final thought.
All right. Let's head into our 3 key takeaways. So, what can we take away from this scenario? First, in wildfire losses, technical accuracy is only half the job. How adjusters explain coverage, follow regulatory guidance, and clarify differences from what policyholders see on social media or hear at local town hall meetings shapes public perception. Second, an empathetic first contact paired with timely payments and clear expectations around coverages can turn a traumatized policyholder into a partner instead of a critic, even in complex fire claims. And third, in a world of my neighbor got this and social media posts, consistent follow-through, doing what we'll say we'll do, and clearly tying positions to policy and regulatory guidance are key ways adjusters protect their own and their company's reputations. Where can an adjuster go to learn more? Head over to plrb.org for more content about wildfires. I know we have a couple webinars on the topic, which I'll share here. I'll share those links in the show notes, and there you'll also find a recap of the key points from this episode and links to our social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us, and please give us a call at 630-509-8704 and leave a voicemail to share your adjuster story. We'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.